We've got the Fish and Game Commission here in California who wants to give more credence and more power to the coyotes that are coming into your backyard and feasting off of your pets. There's a lot that we can do against this, so let's talk about it. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel today. We are back on the predator management portion of California's new goals, but maybe hitting a little bit closer to home today because we're not talking about cougars, we're not talking about wolves, we're not talking about bears, we're talking about coyotes. And I don't know about you, but just about every person I know, rural or urban, has had an encounter with a coyote. It's become a sincere problem. And the Fish and Game Commission was talking about it last week. So as somebody who enjoys punishment a little bit, I thought I would invite our legislative director to the studio here in person so that I could experience the rage in person. So we'll see how that goes. But that, of course, is Rick Travis. You can also find him on the Firing Line Radio. That's on AM 590 The Answer every Saturday at 1 p.m. Rick, thanks for coming in and thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be back.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we jump into that today, guys, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to these videos. It really helps get the information as far and wide as possible. This is something that we're going to need to collectively be working against if we are going to get the coyote population under control here so that our animals can stay part of our family, so that people stop getting attacked by these urban coyotes. It's a sincere issue. So please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. It's a great way for you to directly contribute to these efforts along with the legislative and litigative ones. So, Rick, if you could just jump right in here, why don't you give me a little bit of background on coyotes in California, just in general, before this Fish and Game Commission meeting in the Wildlife Resource Management Committee that we saw?
Yeah, coyotes have become quite controversial. A group that formed through the Earth Island Institute, which is a big anti-hunting. A lot of people will say it has some projects that are good and some projects that aren't. Funded a project called Project Coyote. Project Coyote came out and put a whole lot of information out to try to change public opinion on coyotes, and a lot of it, I think, is mythology, to be quite honest. A lot of it was taking some half-truths, some things that aren't scientifically proven or based, and claiming it as science. And they came out with a handbook that they tried to get into grade schools to change people's minds called God's Dog. And that gives the inference of, like maybe you have a toy dog or a miniature dog that, well, its ancestor is a coyote. And that's not true. All domesticated dogs are descendants of wolves. Like 99% of everything from a Chihuahua to a Great Dane and everything in between is wolf DNA. So that was one of the first things. They came out with this paper that they'd taken from a researcher and said, if you hunt coyotes or kill a coyote, that puts the rest of coyotes into a breeding frenzy to fill that gap. So by killing a coyote, you actually make tons more coyotes. Kind of like it was a Doritos chip factory thing, like eat a bag and we'll make 10 more bags. And they put that out. And for some reason, people were like, oh, that makes sense. Well, if you go back, if you lose a dog, the dog's in a kennel, they don't all of a sudden get frisky and go, hey, let's make puppies. That doesn't happen. And so some of these are really basic theories that if you start to look at it as a public person, take a pause and don't just read everything, and say, oh, that's fact, and go, wait, what? It doesn't make sense. And proof is in scientific, studies. And so back in 2013, when they were pushing this narrative really hard, and they've continued since, and I'll talk to you a little bit about the impacts of that. But what they did was we looked at the population, and the population of coyotes was somewhere between 2.25 and 250,000 statewide. Today, in 2025, U.S. Department of Agriculture, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife all put that number in the neighborhood of 750,000. And why that's important, Kevin, is we halted coyote contests. We halted a whole bunch of things where coyotes were being killed. That number has been lowered, and we have more. So if the theory that Project Coyote had put out was factual, we'd either have a stable population or less. That's not what we have.
So, I mean, does that come? So, I guess a couple of questions here. First of all, you helped start the California Wildlife Conservation Coalition. You did that in conjunction with Bill Gaines from Gaines and Associates, one of the I guess you could say richest conservation movements in the nation is here in California. You've got
Correct.
surrounding states that are trying to copy that model, and I guess I say richest from the synergy and cohesion that kind of goes along with it. Is this like a unanimous? Is this like a unanimous thing throughout the coalition? Does everybody kind of view coyotes and the coyote population currently in California as a net negative? And also, if this is the truth, and Project Coyote was putting out bad information from the start, where does that really leave coyotes as far as where it needs to go forward? I understand the Wildlife Resources Committee meeting is going to be talking about something different, but in your eyes, what needs to happen with coyotes?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things, and they're stresses, and a lot of this stuff is a learning point. I mean, I think one of the first arguments that all of us would agree with in the California Hunting and Conservation Coalition, which is comprised of over 40 different non-governmental organizations, from the California Hawking Club, which obviously deals with birds of prey, all the way to the big sheep. You have deer associations, waterfowl associations, upland game associations, us, and others.
I mean, you're talking about 40 NGOs that really represent hundreds and hundreds of thousands of Californians.
Right. Probably closer to a couple million. And you're also looking at a group of people that, I mean, a lot of you watching this video are like, why can't everybody play nice in the same tent? We do. That's what that coalition's about. And, to your point about coyotes is just one of the apex predators. We discuss this all the time. They're having an impact negatively on the entire ecosystems throughout California. Some areas much more so than in others. And so, if you're with wild coyotes, and I define coyotes personally in a couple of different ways. One are those that are born in the wild. And coyotes are born in the wild. All the material that the California Department of Fish and Wildlife puts out that's scientifically based on how to haze them is great, because rarely will a wild coyote try to come into your camp or get close to you. Like, that's so rare. It's just doesn't really happen that often. But even when you see a coyote on the trail, when I'm out, scouting things and looking at stuff, or just hiking with family and friends, if you see a coyote, you usually see them several hundred yards off. They usually see you way before you see them, and they take off. They bolt. So hazing is not really that necessary unless it's a problem coyote. But inside, the urban setting, what people don't realize is there's several fallacies, Kevin. One of the fallacies is, well, they've always been here. And a lot of people are buying into that because they go somewhere like the San Diego Wild Animal Park or one of the zoos up in Northern California. They'll see a mural of, prehistoric California back when there were woolly mammoths and stuff, and there'll be a coyote inserted. That comes because groups like Project Coyote are like, oh, well, they found a coyote in the La Brea tar pits. Yeah, they've also found modern cats in the La Brea tar pits, modern rats, modern crows, modern everything, because the tar pits are still active. And there's still things that get caught in them, and then other animals like, oh, fast meal, and then they get stuck, and and then they pull the bones out. Those bones were not at the same level, and any common archaeologist would tell you, no. But what that has led people to believe they've always been here. They weren't. Coyotes were in the Central Plains, and as the wagon trains and everything else moved out, coyotes are opportunistic. They're very good at that, and they followed humans because there was a food trail. And it's like, hey, let's follow the food truck. That's the easier way to go. So they didn't really get here till probably about 150 years ago. They're highly adaptable, but now in the urban space, they've further encroached. And part of that encroachment, Kevin, really, and this is where the issue comes down, coyotes are a candid, meaning that they come from the dog family. And when you look at all candids at birth are blind and have no hearing. But at about 10 to 14 days, both of those come online. So think about the coyote pup that's in a culvert, the coyote pup that's in someone's bushes when it's born. Well, when their ears and eyes open up, what are they exposed to? Cars, people, the smells, everything. They're not going to be hazed away, because you banging on, a dustpan going, shoo, get away, is nothing compared to the screech of tires, yelling of kids at playground stuff. So they become habituated. They become habituated to our food. People are like, oh, it's a wild coyote. They feed them. But the results we're seeing, even in the urban setting, we're seeing crows and other corvid-type birds like ravens getting white wings and white feathers because there's not enough protein. Why? Coyotes are decimating the protein. We're not seeing as many squirrels. We're not seeing as many raccoons, as many skunks, as many possums because of the coyotes. And so we have issues up and down, and those issues have crossed a bright line threshold. We said back in 2013, 2014, like, okay, if coyotes get so aggressive that they start biting people or hurting people, then we'll up our game. Kevin, we literally have well over 100 attacks on humans by coyotes.
I was going to say, welcome to today. That's exactly where we're at. So I guess it's time to up our game. But so let's tie this together a little bit, because it seems like we're trying to do the exact opposite of upping our game. We did have the Fish and Game Commission's Wildlife Resource Committee meet last week, and what ended up being on their agenda was to classify coyotes as a non-take animal. Can you go ahead and tie this together for me? You've got organizations like Project Coyote that are putting out false information. The question there is why? Is this just like the hippie thing of saying, they're God's creatures too. They don't deserve to die or anything like that. But while they're desecrating other populations, why is it that this was on the agenda at a Wildlife Resource Committee meeting?
Well, you bring up a couple of good points, and one of the things that I get so freaking frustrated with is you'll have groups like Project Coyote, World Wildlife Fund, all these groups go, Kevin, let's get rid of the zoos. Let's get rid of the wild animal parks. Because you know why? That's wrong. We shouldn't have animals in that urban setting. They should be in the wild. Hey, out the other side of their mouth, let's do everything we can to keep the coyote in our neighborhood. Let's learn how to coexist. Okay, you can't have it both ways. No wild animals around humans, wild animals around humans. It has to be balanced. And one of the things that really upset me at that meeting that came out was the commission staff that works with the commissioners that form the Wildlife Resources Committee. There were three things that really, there's so many things I would love to say, words I would love to use.
You promised not to throw the bear statue
I know, and I'm
while
ready
you were
to.
here.
One of those things was they openly admitted that they had been having private meetings with our opposition for 2 years. And why that really offends me is because the coalition meets quarterly and we have the Game Commission there. And the idea is they're supposed to tell us this is what we're working on. We tell them and in good faith, we've been telling them what we were working on. They only mentioned the coyote issue 3 months ago, which means they had sandbagged us for 21 months. And that is not going to go unchecked. We are complaining. We're going about that. We're talking to people. The second thing was they did a presentation that anybody can go to the meeting documents that was placed literally in the middle of the meeting. And why that's important is by law, you're supposed to have all the meeting documents before the meeting so you can review them. Both the commissioners that represent the Wildlife Resource Committee are like, whoa, we've never seen this. They didn't stop the committee staff. The committee staff went ahead and put a PowerPoint basically showing the opposition of, if you don't like the results of this committee meeting, this is how you take it to the legislature and circumvent the Game Commission and the department. And I sat there going, unbelievable, until one of the senior most members and wildlife advisors to the commission literally stood up and, Kevin, we have worked with the North American model for wildlife management, wildlife conservation. That is a model that is used globally. You know why? Because it freaking works. They use that model because it has shown the best ability to bring back wildlife populations, balance ecosystems. No other model has beat it. And what comes out of the commission staff? They're supposed to be non-political, non-biased, non-emotion driven. They're just to present facts. That is the calling of their position. When this wildlife advisor says, well, personally, I think it's a flawed model and we maybe don't need to use it, and maybe we need to redefine it, and whoa, what are you doing? And no one called them out on it. And so This is one of the things that we're going to be discussing as a coalition. It's one of the things I'm personally pushing on behalf of all the hunters and conservationists and people that are scientifically based and minded. Because if we don't stop this nonsense, it's not just our cats, our dogs, and everything that's being lost. And people need to realize something. Whether you got your dog at a rescue, whether you got your cat at a rescue, or the opposite end, you paid good money to buy that cat, that dog. In your backyard, I don't care if you live in the woods or in the urban environment. People sitting there coming, and I have a story. We had a Russian blue cat. Kevin, this is like 3 years ago. Next door neighbor had a little kid that we kind of called our adopted grandkid because he always came over every morning at 7 a.m. bright and early. And he would play with our cat. And he would say, hey, can your cat come and play with me? And we'd let her out, and she'd go play with him, and then she'd come back and be in the house the rest of the day. She went out, and 5 minutes after she went out, we heard this blood-curdling scream of the little boy, and we raced. In his backyard, which sits literally 6.5 miles from anything that could be considered a greenbelt, was a full-blown coyote shredding the cat in front of him. Like, didn't do a grab and run, like literally, terrifyingly, and showing it, and then ran. Nobody would do anything about it.
Yeah.
And what I got from some of the people, like the Project Coyote crowd, was, well, your cat shouldn't have been out. Wait a second. My backyard, I pay the property taxes, and I've lived there for 30 years and never had a coyote in my backyard. And all of a sudden, I've invaded the coyote space? That's a bold-faced lie. The coyote invaded my space, took my property, and you know what? Tried to save the cat's life, $2,000 in vet bills. No money is coming back. Nothing's happening. And this is the same thing ranchers and everybody else in the non-urban environment are facing statewide, and it's costing us. And one of the things I think anybody watching this video has got to start paying attention. Apex predators are not just killing livestock, they're causing miscarriages. And as several people in that commission meeting talked about, from the Cattlemen's Association, the Farm Bureau of the state, is we're losing upwards of 5 to 10% of our livestock. At those rates, food scarcity goes up, food security goes down, prices, which we would already say are bad in California, go through the roof, which means people are not going to have access to any kind of meat if this continues.
Well, I'm sort of curious. So, what does it mean to be against the North America model of conservation, especially coming from a senior committee member on the, from the Fish and Game Commission?
It completely unravels everything we do. When you look at the Fish and Game Code, when you look at hunter education, which I tell people all the time, even if you don't hunt, take hunter education. Why? Because it explains what actually happens. One of the things that I think is salient in this conversation is people look at hunting as like, oh, well, it's all about trophies, and oh, it's all about this, and oh, it's all about that, because that's what the anti-hunting crowd, which is only about 3% of the population. And so, one of the things that was put out on the Game Commission was Camilla Fox of Project Coyote got up there and she did this spiel. She's like, 97% of Americans, maybe 99%, hate hunting. Okay, that has been proven false over and over by multiple groups. What she's doing is purporting absolute lies. The fact is, it's about 3% that hunt, 3% that hate it. And the rest of the crowd is like, hey, long as you're not just killing things for the sake of killing it, you're good. And I think what people don't realize is we have to balance these populations. You mentioned at the beginning of the video, bears, for example. Well, the bear population, we have dropped our numbers, and this is how ridiculous in that same commission meeting it got. We were saying, hey, could we possibly look at a spring season or a second tag for bears? Because the number of bears you're allowed to take every year is 1,700, period. When that number's hit, hunting ends for the season. Right now, it's somewhere between 800 and 900. So people are like, yeah, well, if you do that, you're going to double the number. It's still under the number, Kevin. Yeah. We're not taking more bears. But what did the anti say? They're going to take more bears than they're supposed to. No. And it's these kind of lies that get out into the press, get out into the public, and the public is like, oh, they just want to kill. No, people
Well,
are
that,
trying
and
to
it,
feed.
it completely buries the fact that no single group puts more into conservation. That includes PETA, all of these other animal rights activist groups. Nobody puts more into the conservation of these ecosystems than the conservationists, and which I mean, if you think about it logically, makes sense. You know, if you want to go out and take something so that you can eat, you're going to want to make sure that the population is healthy. That is the ideology there. You want to make sure you have healthy populations so that you can continue to take from it. It's almost like you wouldn't prepare a field to have crops and then make it radioactive afterwards. You want to continue to be able to keep taking, which is why you keep the land healthy. That's really what it comes down to, and they just want to kind of pinpoint how killing happens and demonize it that way.
And one of the things I think is really important for people to realize is, one of the, and I would argue probably to date, the most environmentally focused governor in California state history was Jerry Brown.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of people, and me being one of them, that don't always agree with him on Second Amendment, obviously. But when Jerry Brown signed AB 711 a little over a decade ago into law, which dealt with the lead ban in bullets for hunting, he said, I want to make perfectly clear, and he didn't have to do this. He chose to do this in a signing statement. Governors sign all sorts of laws, never even give a signing statement. He said, I want to make perfectly clear, hunters and anglers have done more to preserve California's ecosystem than any other group by a long shot, and that's an over 100-year-long legacy that continues to this day.
Yeah.
The most environmentally focused governor said the environment's number one ally, hunters and anglers. He didn't say World Wildlife Fund. He didn't say PETA. He didn't say Project Coyote. That's what he said. And people forget that. And so, whenever I'm contacted by the media, I bring that up. Ironically, they never put that in the news article. It's factual because it's there online for anybody to go look at in the governor's statement. It's part of a historical document. But people need to realize that because, I bet you money if I walked into a group of people that are really animal friendly and never want to see animal hurt. And I said, did you know Jerry Brown said these are the good guys? They'd be like, what? Yep, there it is.
Well, let's talk about this because a coyote population going from 250K to 750K in a decade is not necessarily the signs of a healthy population, especially for the ecosystem here in California. So let's put a bow on this. What really was the conclusion from this committee meeting, and how does it look going forward?
So it doesn't look good going forward. We're trying to fight it. There's many people that want to see this within the greater community not to move forward. And here's why. What they're trying to do is three things. One, they're trying to strip away the right of local government to be able to trap problem coyotes in neighborhoods where they bite little girls on beaches, like in Huntington Beach. They bite 30-year-olds running at 1 o'clock in the afternoon in the Bay Area and everything in between. We've had kids drug off of graves on a Saturday afternoon as they're there with their parents, trying to say goodbye to grandma or great grandma. Just all sorts of horrific things. People can't walk in parks, do things, from the water's edge. Places where, for crying out loud, in Huntington Beach, where I sometimes go bodyboarding and stuff, you can see a coyote at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on the beach. I grew up in that town. There were never coyotes in high school, college, or anything anywhere near the water's edge during daylight hours. Maybe night when everybody was asleep, but never during the day. The second thing that they're trying to go after is by making it a non-game animal. The only way you could hunt it would be a game animal. And here's one of the things. You can't have a thing called wanton waste, because wanton waste is where you kill an animal and you don't either use the hide and or the meat for food. Okay, it's against the law, Kevin, to use coyote pelts to make anything in California. And no one's going to make coyote tacos or anything else because nobody eats candids in California, which means now I shoot the coyote, I'm guilty of a misdemeanor, and if I have a couple of those, it could be a felony. I lose my firearms rights. I lose a whole bunch of other rights. I don't want that. That's not something I want. So what they're trying to make is so no coyotes get killed by people, which hurts livestock issues. It hurts urban issues. It takes it so that law enforcement and local animal control have no control. And this is where it gets bad. Coyotes are one of the biggest vectors for what are called zoonotic diseases, things like parvo, things like dermatectic mange, things like that that can get in the population. So when the coyotes run across your fence line, which is common, or they're up on your roof, which we have pictures throughout Orange County and Northern California, different places of that happening, they can drop the mites that get onto your cat, your dog, whatever, and bring mange in. And mange is horrible. It's hard to get rid of. These are vector issues, and they're trying to remove all that. This is going to have an economic cost and an economic impact before you even get to the emotional one. And so what I try to tell people is, to all those people that love to put their dogs in strollers and backpacks and carry them, you may think coyotes are great until what are you going to do when your dog's dead, which a lot of people unfortunately have had to go through, or dies because they get a disease that the coyote introduced. And so sound management is doing that. Plus, we're forgetting as the ecosystem collapses, we're losing iconic species in California. And so this is the other thing I want to go to animal rights. When did predators, bears, wolves, coyotes, mountain lions, bobcats, become the sacred animal compared to cute little skunks? Those were in the Disney movies, along with Bambi, and everything else. When did we do this ranking system? Because all those other animals are being decimated by our predator overload. And the problem is other states have went through this and they've had to balance it. California is refusing to balance it. And some of those species exist nowhere on the earth. I mean, we have a big elk called a Thule elk. It exists nowhere outside of California. The population is not that far from becoming threatened, endangered, and eventually extinct because of predators out of control. And one of those predators that are laying waste to all the fawns, in fact, are in a kind of a tied race, depending where you go with bears for doing it, are coyotes.
Well, really quick, I mean, is this something that we will have another chance to advocate against? So you don't necessarily get rules and regulations out of a committee. It's got to go in front of the full commission. So what do we have looking forward to there?
I think we have two things. September 11th, it will be back in front of the Wildlife Resources Committee, and most likely will hit the commission before the end of the year. There's still two commission meetings after that, Kevin. I believe one's October, the other one's in December. So there's that plank. And then we're looking at next January that the anti-crowd that wants to elevate coyotes over every other thing in California and focus on a single species, we're looking at they're probably going to try to make a move in the legislature. And so a lot of what we're going to be doing as a coalition, CRPA and other groups like us are going to be doing is educating the public, because they're going to put a soundbite of like, stop the killing, which isn't going on, when we should be saying, let's start coming together with lawsuits. I mean, one of the things one of our attorneys said a year ago, and I think he's right, imagine if everybody watching this video that's lost a cat or dog took their local government to small claims court to get reimbursed for the loss of their pet. Immediately, cities and counties would be like, no bueno, because we have to put a city or county attorney at really high rates and to defend it. And that would put a lot of pressure on the state government to say, knock it off.
Well, hopefully we can get there. And I got to feel like, there's going to be a lot of opposition to this one. I don't know too many people who are too happy about the coyote nuisance in the neighborhoods here, but certainly something to look forward to. Guys, if you're a member, you already received the emails heading up to this first Wildlife Resource Commission meeting. We're going to be pushing it out for the next few so that we can make sure this one does not get across the line, and then we can look at the legislature next year. Rick, I want to thank you for coming on and sharing all this with us. I really appreciate it today.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely. And guys, if you like content like this, you want to continue seeing it, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to these videos. Really helps get the information out there, and it is a great way for you to directly contribute to the litigative and legislative efforts here for the Second Amendment in California. Thanks again, guys. We'll see you on the next one.